Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass. Today we're going to look at one of the most popular bass lines that you'll encounter in rock and metal styles. It's not a song, although it is used in many songs. It's what I'm going to refer to as a pedaling bass line. It's not pedal point, that's a different thing. This is a pedaling bass line whereby we just play a continuous pedal of 8th or 16th notes on single notes through a chord progression, like this. It might look ridiculously simple, but that style of bass line can be harder to play well than you might realise. So I'm going to highlight some of the things that you might need to work on and give you some tips on developing a better pedalling groove. As always, give me a like, leave a comment, subscribe and hit that bell to get weekly notifications on lesson releases. The lesson material and tracks for this lesson are all there over at Talkingbass, so just click the link in the info below, and while you're there, check out the lesson map where you'll find over 350 more free lessons on every aspect of bass playing, all systemised and organised for ease of navigation. We've also got a New Year sale on this week with a discount on all the premium courses. So if you want to learn to read music, develop your technique, learn music theory, work on your ear training, or even if you're a total beginner, there's something for everyone. So just check out the courses page at the website. Okay, so let's have a look at a simple example of a pedaling bass line. To begin with, we'll just stick to an open A string, and all we're going to do is play a steady, constant stream of 8th notes with alternate picking. So we'll be counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? So let's just have a try at that at a slow to medium tempo. So we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, on the face of it, you might be thinking, nah, that's easy. You know, I'm way better than this. But don't be too hasty in dismissing this line. There are a few things that you need to consider. First things first, are you playing consistently good time? When you play that line, you should be able to hold a tempo and play those subdivisions accurately for as long as required. And to be honest, a lot of this comes down to good technique, rhythmic awareness, stamina, and general playing experience. Your technique and stamina have to be on point so that you're not fighting yourself in any physical sense. If your stamina isn't, up to getting through a song with this kind of line, then you're going to start fumbling the notes and your rhythm's going to start to falter. So what might start as eventually, when the stamina starts to deteriorate, and physically you're working against yourself, you might things might all start to go wrong. So physically, like I say, you need to be on point. I talked about this in a recent video on good time, so I'll put a link in the info below, but in there I talk about how technique is a huge contributing factor when it comes to good time, even though technique and timing seem like totally separate areas of playing. Another thing to look at when playing a pedaling line is your consistency of picking attack. I always found these kind of lines great for practicing my picking technique. The first thing to work on is a consistent attacking strength between the two fingers, so there's barely any difference in their sound. So if we play our open A string pedal again, start the line with the middle finger and focus on the attack of each finger in turn. So is one finger striking harder than the other? Is there a difference in the tone or strength? If the middle finger is hitting harder, it's going to sound like this. And if the index finger is hitting harder, it's going to sound like this. You want to even them both out so that they sound more like this. Now, to do this, you simply have to focus on playing that stronger finger a little lighter, or the weaker finger a little harder. Now that might sound really easy, but if one of your fingers is naturally weaker than the other, you're going to find the corrected line feels a little unnatural at first. But this is all about gaining control and independence of the fingers. So practice doing this away from any clicks or drum tracks or anything like that, so you can really focus on the sound of those bass notes and how it feels to adapt the finger picking attack. So here I'm picking harder with the second finger. So I need to just focus on lightening that up a little. okay? And I'd always recommend going lighter than stronger first because you're going to develop better control that way. So now with the stronger index finger, that's going to sound like this. So let's lighten it up. Now, once you have a consistent attack in that pedal, you can try adding accents into the mix. Now, obviously, you need to get the consistent attack first before you do this, but then you can add them in where you want. So this is good for beginner players in developing the control in your picking technique, and it'll actually help with getting a consistent feel. So let's try an accent just on beat 1 first. So same bass line, but we're going to accent on beat 1. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you'll notice there that you're going to be accenting with that second finger. Next, let's try accenting on beats 1 and 3. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you'll notice that I'm kind of over accenting there, but that's okay. You can try that at first, you know, really hitting down with that finger and then gradually become a little bit more subtle with it. So obviously when you first start trying this, you know, really hit and then just try to vary the attack a little on those accents. Now let's try a couple of accents with the index finger. So we'll try an accent on the and of 2, okay? So we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and now let's try the and of 2 and the and of 4. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 Okay. One way to practice developing that finger control is to try playing groups of 3 with 2 fingers, accenting on the first note of each group. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you'll find that when you do this, the accent switches fingers each time. So if we start with the second finger, we've got, middle finger, we've got middle, index, middle, index, middle, index. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Finally, let's try about a 4/4 with the popular 8th note grouping of 3 plus 3 plus 2. So this is going to give you some practice at moving between those grouping accents. So again, with the open A string, we're just going to have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay, so it's still 4/4, it's just that we're grouping those 8th notes as 3, a 3, and a 2. Okay, so try a little bit quicker. Okay, so now let's try playing to a drum track so we can focus on those subdivisions, our stamina, our conviction, and our finger control. We're going to play a pedal bass line through a progression of G, C, and D. G for 4 bars, C for 2 bars, and D for 2 bars. And it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, as you can see, we're just playing those root notes, G at the 3rd fret of the E string, C at the 3rd fret of the A string, and D at the 5th fret of the A string. So it's a really, really simple progression, and when you play the line, be sure to count those subdivisions in your head while keeping track of the bars. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4. And I also want you to accent on beats 2 and 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. These are the snare hits and the main accents of the beat that really give that driving rock feel. When you hit those accents, you should feel them really striking out with the snare, and that should give you a good point of reference for checking your timing and conviction. The more that you lock in with that snare, the less likely you are to fall into that laziness that I mentioned earlier. So you want to keep that driving rock feel and don't lose the conviction. So away from the drum track, we have the following at a slow tempo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. As one last technical tip, be sure to make the shift from one string to the next as smooth as possible. So this is another example of how deficiencies in your technique can impact on your timing. If you're trying to skip from the E string to the A string with that first finger, when you go from the G to the C, it's easy to get a little hiccup in the rhythm, especially at quicker speeds. One way to avoid that is to use joint barring on that shift. So you play the G on the E string as normal with the first finger, and then simply use the lever action of the finger to switch over to the C on the A string. Okay, so you want to get used to that movement first. You've got the G there, and then you just simply let that lever action of the joint bring the finger back. You don't have to do it too hard. You don't have to, whack down or anything. You just shift that back so that you catch in that A string more with this part of the finger. So the E string's with that part, and then the A string's more with this part, right? So you want to get used to switching over. Then, when you come to playing the pedal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So you can really get a smooth transition from the E string to the A string. So let's try that bass line again, and we'll work through 3 different drum tracks that I've provided over at the website. One is at 140 beats per minute, then we have a more upbeat tempo of 180, and then finally a fast tempo of 220 beats per minute. So here's 140 BPM. I'm going to play around on it a couple of times, but feel free to keep going as long as you want. 1, 2, 3, 4. Etc. Okay, now let's try a little quicker. Let's try 180 beats per minute. And as you can tell there, because it's a little bit quicker, at first it might seem a little too quick for you, but eventually over time you're going to be able to build up your speed and your stamina, by keeping going round and round on it, maybe 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. Finally, let's try a fast tempo of 220 beats per minute. Okay, so that's pedaling bass lines. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell, and then go check out the drum tracks over at Talkingbass. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a New Year sale on for the next week, so grab a bargain on one of the massive step-by-step courses while you can. Okay, I'll see you next week.